If Trump posts 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, this will result in higher prices for American consumers. So, could these tariffs ultimately backfire on him?
They could. That's kind of the main political consideration and economic consideration that we're looking at over the next couple of weeks. It's going to require the Trump team to really get comfortable with the fact that right now, as the US is battling inflation, these policies are going to reignite price pressures. US voters, partially voted for the economy in November. And if we see kind of the blowback from these policy moves, then there could be some consequences. The big caveat is Trump's base tends to be quite forgiving. And so if we do see any, implications of this or shocks from this, it might not happen for a couple of months, but it's going to cause a lot of anxiety, particularly in the US business community, among other US trade partners, in terms of the direction of travel for where US trade policy is looking at going in 2025.
In July of 2020, the United States signed a trade deal with Canada and Mexico. So, with respect to that deal, is there action that Canada and Mexico could take to push back against these proposed tariffs?
Yeah, well, I mean, the threats that we're seeing from Donald Trump are essentially not really based on economic considerations. They're based on immigration. They're based on allegations of drugs flowing into the U.S. And so tariff imposition is happening kind of outside of the USMCA, suggesting that in theory, the U.S. could be in violation of these provisions. That means that we'll be looking at how Mexico and Canada are going to respond, particularly from a retaliatory perspective. I think U.S. agricultural exports are going to be the sector to watch here. But it raises a lot of uncertainty around not just kind of what's permissible under USMCA, but what this means for USMCA.
The Chinese embassy responded to the proposed tariffs saying that nobody would win a China US trade war. But this seems like a trade war on everybody right now. Is there anybody or any part of any supply chain which might come out ahead?
The moves that we've just seen out of from Donald Trump are maybe the initial salvos in what looks like could be a pretty bruising trade war with the entire world. All that being said, I mean, based on where currencies go, whether we see exemptions, whether we see kind of the U.S. strike some carve-outs or negotiations with particularly key security economic partners, there could be some countries that are less affected than others. I mean, those who we are anticipating to be the biggest losers would include China, Mexico. The next one we'll be looking at very closely is potentially Vietnam. But when we look at other countries like Malaysia, Thailand, where these nations haven't really been as much on Donald Trump's radar, they have benefited quite strongly from supply chain shifts over the past couple of years. And if we see their currencies depreciate against the dollar, we might see an offsetting effect on higher U.S. duties. And so those countries might actually stand to benefit from this. But this is an optimistic reading. At the end of the day, higher tariffs are going to lead to more inefficient supply chains. They're going to risk inflationary blowback.